Hello and welcome back to A&P with Emily. I'm Emily and today we're going to go through some medical terminology. So we're going to look at those big, horrible, nasty, scary Latin words and break them down piece by piece and get to know what they mean and start to memorise them, start to study them. So, medical terminology, those big scary words normally consist of three parts. So we've got a prefix, so what comes before, we've got a root and we've got a suffix. So prefix and suffix, you'll already know what they are. But the root of a word is generally the central meaning around it. So in anatomy and physiology, the root of a word is likely going to be some sort of body part that we're relating to. So whether that's a procedure, whether that's a condition, or whether that's some sort of imaging result. That's what we're looking at here. So let's take, for example, a scary word. So let's take myocarditis. So you can see I've split that up into two. So we've got myo here, card as our root, and itis in the middle, not in the middle, at the end. So let's break this down even further so we can understand what it means. So myo means muscle. Card or cardio, you know what that means, that's the heart. And then itis is an inflammatory condition. So I'm just going to write inflammatory here. So already, just from breaking those down, we can see that that's inflammation of the heart muscle. Okay? So now I want to give you some more frequently used prefix and suffixes in relation to certain things. So here we go with this. So ignore this for the time being. So we've already discovered that itis is inflammation. So osis means an abnormal condition. Now an example of that would be something like cyanosis, which is caused from the cold or due to lack of oxygen in a specific area of the body. So cyanosis. And if we break that word up, we've got blue, which is cyan, and osis, which comes back to that, which is an abnormal condition. See how easy this is starting to get now? If you break the words down and you figure out what each individual part means, it just makes it a lot easier. So let's go on to something different. So ectomy. So these are all suffixes at the moment, by the way, not prefixes. So an ectomy. So let's take an appendectomy. I've had one of those. I no longer have my appendix. Okay. So, and even if we break that up, so that's not three parts. This is just two, but it's still a very long word. So if we take that, ectomy means to remove or cut out. And append is appendix. Okay, so we're just getting those really long words and we're breaking them down into words that we can understand. Moving on to something else as well. So we'll do an otomy, I think. So an otomy, like a tracheotomy, trying to show you I've spelt it right. So tracheotomy, so trache, so we know that's to do with the trachea. And otomy means to cut into. So not to cut out, like an ectomy, but to cut into. So a tracheotomy is essentially cutting into the trachea. And then if we go to an ostomy, like a colostomy. So there's lovely things called colostomy bags. So if you have a colostomy, so colostomy, and ostomy is to to make an opening. So make a permanent opening, make a temporary opening, anything like that, ostomy, so within the colon. Okay? Even more for you. We're going to go with a or an. It might sound like a bit of a weird one, but think of all these things. So you've got anemia, anesthesia, and all this a or this an means is without. So think about these for a second. So anemia, emia is blood. So what can we take from that? That's without blood. If you're anemic, everyone's been anemic, I'm sure, at some point in their life, but you are without blood. Not completely, but you are lacking in substantial blood volume. And anesthesia, is feeling. So with anaesthetic, you are without feeling. So when you go under general or local anaesthetic, you can't feel what's happening. So that's all that means. It's just without feeling. Take you through some really, really basic ones now. So micro is obviously small. And then you've got macro, which is large. And then you've got mega, which is enlarged. Okay, so there's some nice basic ones. And the last one for that I really want to go through is like a scopy or a scopic. So and annoyingly sticking with our colon thing from earlier. So if you have a colonoscopy, colonoscopy, so that's just a look into. So it's to observe, and that is your colon. So they're kind of written backwards, so it's what's happening to what part of your body. So what's the procedure to what part of the body? It's almost you read it backwards. But once you start to understand what these terms mean, you can look at these big scary words and go, so that's what that means, and you can break it down into, even if you take one of the longest medical terminology words, you can take one of those and just identify the different words in between them and go, okay, so that means that means that, so this is this. And it makes things much easier to break it down like this. So there was just something I wanted to touch on when we were talking about inflammation. So for inflammation to be present and for it to be diagnosable, it needs to consist of 4 things. So there needs to be, I'll write this up here for you. So inflammation, there needs to be redness, there needs to be pain, there needs to be swelling, and heat. So all 4 things need to be present in order for it to constitute as an inflammation. Okay, and just one more thing I want to go through is like an ology or an ologist. Now essentially, that's just a specialist doctor, okay? So it's a physician or a clinician that specialises within whatever comes before this. So if you had a cardiologist, again, breaking those words up, so this is the heart and this is a specialist doctor. So you know it's a specialist doctor that deals with the heart, same as a neurologist and so on and so forth. Okay? Okay, so let's move on to the good stuff, my favourite bits. So the root words we're going to look at now. So we've had a look at some prefixes and some suffixes, and now we're going to look at the root words. So that's directly relating to the part of the body or the organs or organ systems or anything like that. Okay, so let's start with the face. Bit of a weird place to start. We should start with the head, shouldn't I? We're going to start with the face. Okay, so we're going to go with mouth first. Now, medical term for mouth, if you're going to do any kind of procedure with the mouth or just in general, it's called stomato. Now, anyone want to take a guess at how Emily remembers this? Let's get rid of the S and it becomes tomato, because we eat tomatoes, tomatoes go in our mouth. So, stomato goes in the mouth. It's ridiculous, I'm sorry. Okay, so mouth, we've got that. Now, inside the mouth, what have we got? We've got the teeth. So, this should be a pretty straightforward one. Where do we go to get our teeth into? Dentist. So, this becomes dento, or dent, and I just put dentist here. It's a little reminder. What else have we got in our mouth? So we've got gums. Now, some of you might know this, some of you might not, but that is gingivo. And gingivitis. I think we might have all heard of that one. Now, I want to break this word down again. I want to keep doing that with you so it becomes natural. So, gingi, or gingivi, we know that that's gums, and we know that itis is inflammation, so we know that this is no longer a scary word. This is inflammation of the gums, okay? Make sure you've got that. Now, going towards the top of the head, I want to do the brain. So the brain is a bit of a weird one. So the brain is encephal or encephalo. Now, we may have all heard of encephalitis. Now that we know what encephalo means, this is a lot easier to break down. So this is the brain, this is inflammation. So encephalitis is inflammation of the brain. Another one is, where can we go from here? So we've done this, sticking with the brain for now, let's go with nerves. So if you have a disease, an inflammatory or a non-inflammatory can't speak, disease of the nerves, this is nice and easy, and it just is neuro, okay? So for example, a neurologist. So ologist we know is a specialist doctor, and neuro we know now is nerves. Nerves or nervous system. So that will be a doctor that specialises in the nervous system. Moving on to a few more for you. So for our stomach, I think we all probably know what that's going to be. So gastro. If you didn't already have a way to come up with that, then my stupid way is stomach, gastro. If you go to a gastro pub, you eat food. Where does your food go? In your stomach. So I'm going to put gastro pub. Okay, so that's that one. Maybe let's look at the intestine. Is it entero? So if we look at something like gastroenteritis, oh, big word again. Let's combat it. So gastro, stomach, entero, and itis we know is inflammation. Okay, so this is all getting really easy now, guys. Let's move on to something a little bit more, I don't want to say the word vulgar, but it is a bit. So let's go on to something like the rectum, for example. Let's go on to that. And if you've ever heard of Oh, okay, actually, let's do this first. So that ends up being procto. So if you've heard of a proctologist, that's a doctor that specialises within your rectum or your anal area. Proctologist. Let's go for your liver now. Your liver will be Hepat. I don't really have a way for remembering this one. If you guys have something of your own or you think of something, let me know in the comments. And yeah, no, I'll have a good giggle at whatever they are, okay?